Howdy, folks. Welcome back to another fun-filled day of science. This is chapter 3.2, Plant Reproduction. On board your screen right there, you go ahead and see your bell ringer and your bell ringer there. Go ahead and look at that and answer that question there on edmodo.com. Let's go ahead and get started. There we go. Come on. There you go. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. All right. Objective today: describe the patterns of sexual reproduction in non-vascular plants. Describe the patterns of sexual reproduction in seedless vascular plants, and describe the pattern of sexual reproduction in seed plants. And last but definitely not least is identify 3 kinds of asexual reproduction in plants. Those are the 4 things we'll be discussing today in today's lesson 3.2, Plant Reproduction. Here we go. In plant reproduction, plants have 2 stages in their life cycle. They have a sporophyte stage, which makes tons and tons and tons and tons of spores, and the gametophyte stage, where the females make the eggs and the males make the sperm. Okay? And remember, we got to have a connection between, we got to have the male sperm and the female egg together in sexual reproduction in order to create a new plant. Okay, reproduction in non-vascular plants. Non-vascular plants will be covered by a film of water. They must be, ladies and gentlemen, they must be covered by a film of water in order for fertilization to occur. If there is no water, the sperm and the egg cannot meet together and fertilize that egg or that spore. All right, ladies and gentlemen, they have to have that water. If they don't have it, it will not fertilize. Now, when we talk about the egg and the sperm on these non-vascular plants, that they form in separate structures, which are often on separate plants. If you look at some of your trees, you can see that on some of those plants, you can see that some have the male sex cell and some have the female sex cell, if you know what you're looking for. All right, when water covers the clumps of gametophytes, sperm swim to the female gametophyte and fertilize the eggs. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, with that water, that sperm is able to flow over here to the egg, and then it meets the egg, and guess what? You have a fertilized egg. If that sperm cannot swim because there is no water, if that sperm cannot swim, there is no water, guess what? It's like, oh, I can't go anywhere. I'm stuck here. I can't go anywhere. And the water comes, oh, I'm here. I'm happy. All right. And that is how it happens in non-vascular plants. Seedless vascular plants are a little bit different. They do produce a large number of spores like the non-vascular plants do. And they can only reproduce in a film of water if the film of water covers gametophytes, just like the non-vascular plants. However, both egg and sperm are produced on the same plant. When we talk about seedless vascular, non-vascular plants, the egg and sperm are typically on different plants. But when we talk about seedless vascular plants, they are the egg and the sperm are produced on the exact same plant, the exact same one. Gametophytes of seedless vascular plants are usually very small and develop on or below the surface of the soil. In other words, those gametophytes, which is the male sperm and the female egg, those are usually developed or created under the surface of the soil. If it does not develop there, ladies and gentlemen, it's not going to develop anywhere. All right? In seed plants, most seed plants reproduce sexually without water. These seed plants do not need to have water. All right, like the non-vascular and the seedless vascular, those plants have to have water. The seed plants do not need them. Do not need to have water. For that reason, they can live in many different environments. You think about the desert, because the desert does not get very much water. Those seed plants can live there. All right. Reproduction in gymnosperms. Now, there's 2 types of seed plants. You have gymnosperms and you have angiosperms. All right. Most gymnosperms have reproductive cells or structures called cones. So if you look at a pine tree, for example, you'll see the pine cone on the pine tree. That tells you that that is a gymnosperm. All right. What happens then is wind transfers the pollen, which is the male sex cell, from the male cone to the female cone during the pollination. So we have wind blow And here comes the male sex cell over to the female sex cell, and then we have pollination. All right, now pollination is simply the distributing of the pollen to the other plant, ladies and gentlemen. Sperm from pollen fertilizes the eggs of the female cone, and guess what? You have a brand new gymnosperm, baby, gymnosperm. All right, but now we're going to talk about angiosperms. Angiosperms develop within, their gametophytes develop within flowers. So if we look at a flower, we typically are looking at an angiosperm. They develop inside of a flower. Now, there are trees that are obviously angiosperms as well. Pollination happens when pollens move from anthers to the stigmas, and we'll show you a picture of that in just a minute, and I'll explain that better to you. Fertilization happens when the sperm fuses with the egg inside an ovule. You should have figured that out by now, that you need to have the male sex cell, which is the sperm, and the female sex cell, which is the egg, and they need to combine in order to have pollination and fertilization to occur. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Take a look at this example of a beautiful flower. I drew this myself, not really, but this is out of your book. So we take a look here. These little dots over here, these little orange dots, these are all pollen. And so the pollen gets transferred either by wind or by insects, and they get transferred throughout these plants or throughout different plants as the insects or the wind blows to different plants. And some of them eventually land on these anthers and these stigmas here. Now, some of them land there. Now, whenever they do, they actually create a pollen tube. And that pollen tube allows for the sperm and the pollen to go down into where the ovary is and to fertilize an ovule, which is the egg inside of the female structure. That is the egg. The ovary is where the eggs are located. So that sperm travels down here and actually fertilizes an egg. And that is how the fertilization process in a seed, in an angiosperm, takes place. Now, from that point, you have a flower, and after it's been fertilized, it turns into a seed. The ovule turns into a seed, and that seed then contains is basically the whole plant. It's a tiny undeveloped plant, and it will eventually, if that seed lands in the proper conditions, that seed will eventually swell and ripen, and it eventually will become a new plant. But inside that seed, a fruit will eventually surround that seed, and is there to protect that developing seed. The fruit often helps a plant spread its seeds. Now, you think about that. If you eat an orange or an apple, and you have the seeds there, and you spit the seeds out, well, guess what? That is exactly what you're doing. You're allowing that seed then to be planted someplace else. Quick story. Don't have a lot of time, but we were eating watermelons when I was a kid. My dad took a plate of seeds and threw them out by the fence by our house. The next year, when we were enjoying a nice summer day by our pool, we noticed, as we were cutting the grass, there was a watermelon vine. We said, well, how did that get there? And then it dawned on us, we'd throw the seeds out the year before. Guess what? We had new watermelon plants. Woohoo! All right. From a seed to a plant. So when those seeds are dropped, if they're dropped in a suitable environment, the seeds will then sprout, grow plants, become young plants, and begin to grow. All right, and in the sprout, most seeds need water, air, and warm temperatures. Each plant species has an ideal temperature at which the seeds will grow. So here's we go. Here's just the example. Now, if you remember this picture from the first image over there that we just did, I just talked to you guys about. This would be the first step right here. Okay, this is where the mature plant produces a flower, pollination, and fertilization takes place. After that happens, the flower falls away. Each ovule within the flower contains a fertilized egg. So all of these right here are now a fertilized egg. Petals and stamen fall away, which these are the petals, these are the stamen. They fall away, and we have just the center parts here that is containing our ovules. The ovary becomes the fruit, and each ovule becomes a seed. Individually, eventually the fruit ripens and the seeds are dispersed. So this is an example of a pea right here, I would say, or a bean. So the seeds inside there are actual tiny little plants. All right, and eventually that fruit opens and disperses those seeds, and then those seeds grow to become the plant, and then I guess the plant gets fertilized again, and it keeps going on and on and on and on. There are other types of reproduction as well, and we'll talk about plantlets. Plantlets are tiny plants that grow along the edges of a plant's leaf. These plantlets fall off and grow on their own. So they have a plant, and a little plantlet growing off the side, and all of a sudden it falls off, and it has creates its own individual little plant. Another example is the tuba. An underground tuba or stems can produce new plants after a dormant season. So these tubas actually grow and then they grow new plants. All right. And lastly would be our runners, and these are above ground stems which new plants grow from. All right, these are like strawberries or like runners and stuff like that because new plants keep growing off of those other ones. All righty. Guess what? It is review time. Review time. It's time for the review. This is your section 2 review. I will stop so you can read and take notes if you need to. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that video, and I hope you guys are having fun so far in our flipped classroom. This is me, Mr. Lewis, going ahead and signing off. And you guys all have a great day, and I'll see you in the future.